When people talk about alternative rock in the 1980s, especially from a college radio perspective, conversation almost always circles around the usual suspects. You'll hear about REM and the Replacements, maybe even the Smithereens. Just tucked outside of that American-centric lens is a band that not only matched those groups in songwriting depth and emotional honesty, but in many ways surpassed them in pure storytelling craft. And that band is Paul Kelly and the Messengers. And I'm going to talk about Paul Kelly a lot later on. He's one of my favorite artists, one of my favorite human beings ever. But this one's just going to focus on his time with the Messengers. I think it's 4 or 5 albums that they did. But when he was fronting the Messengers, that was some of his best stuff. The Messengers weren't just a backing band. They were a fully realized musical unit that, gave his songs weight and kind of a lived-in feel that sounded, kind of American, if you think about it. And that's not why I loved them, but we'll get into that. I discovered Paul Kelly and the Messengers, and I'm pretty sure this is how it went. I used to get Rolling Stone magazine. In the back of the magazine, they would have concert dates or tour dates for bands who were on the road. Crowded House, one of my favorite bands, were on the road. And it said opening act, Paul Kelly and the Messengers. I never got to see Crowded House until much, much, much later. Didn't get to see Paul Kelly until much later. But I figured at the time that if they were good enough for Crowded House, they're good enough for me. So I went out and bought their album Under the Sun and then worked backwards to get the previous albums and then just kept on going from there. So that's how I found them. Now, to understand why the Messengers era hit so differently, you kind of have to understand what Paul Kelly was before then. He was already a respected songwriter in Australia, someone who had been grinding through the pub rock circuit, building a reputation as a sharp observer of behavior. But, like a lot of good artists in that phase, the music hadn't quite caught up to the writing yet. So you'll notice that on some of his previous albums and even the first album he did with the Messengers. It's got some production that sounds like it was produced when it was produced. So leave it like it is. But like a lot of artists in that phase, the music hadn't caught quite up yet. It was good, sometimes very good, but it lacked that cohesive band identity that turned songs into something bigger than themselves. And that all changed when the Messengers came together, bringing with them a musical sensibility that blended the rock sound, folk, a little bit of soul, and a pretty good helping of country, American-style country, in a way that felt completely natural, and it didn't feel, forced or put on. Now, what makes the Messengers, that era anyway, so compelling is how effortlessly the band supports the storytelling. At his heart, Paul Kelly is a storyteller, probably one of the best that ever has lived, definitely in my lifetime. You never feel like the music's trying to overshadow the lyrics, but it's also never just sitting in the background, right? There's this really perfect balance where the guitar line, the rhythm section, every subtle keyboard accent feels like it's there specifically for a reason. And it's that kind of band chemistry that you can't manufacture. You either have it or you don't. And the Messengers absolutely had it. Their breakthrough moment, at least internationally, came with the album Gossip. And it was originally called Post, I think, over in Australia. And they were Paul Kelly and the Colored Girls before they changed their name to the Messengers, obviously. And then renamed the album Gossip, or I think Post might have been a shorter album and they just added more tracks to it and released it here. Anyways, it's called Gossip. And this is the record where everything kind of clicked. The songwriting, the band production, the sense of purpose, it's all there. And what's fascinating about Gossip is how it manages to feel really personal and universally relatable at the same time. Australian artists sometimes, especially the deep Australian, kind of doesn't carry over because they have so many different colloquialisms and different habits and mannerisms that it doesn't translate well. Paul Kelly's, it's all universal. I mean, you can understand everything he's singing about. All the stories some are emotional, some are gut-wrenching, some are funny. He's great. But their songs are about specific people, specific places, specific moments, just specific things. I don't know, I've always kind of liked that because my songwriting is a little more nebulous, but his really tells a specific story. And they resonate because the emotions are so clearly drawn. You don't have to be from Australia to understand what he's talking about. You just got to be a person, One of the defining characteristics of Paul Kelly and the Messengers during this period was their ability to tell stories without over-explaining them. There's just a trust in that the listener kind of feels, that kind of trust feels radical, today. He gives you just enough detail to paint a picture, but then he leaves that space for you to fill in the gaps. And that's a big part of why these songs stick with you. They don't just play out in front of you. They kind of invite you in, and you gotta get to sit back and just watch them unfold. It's really neat. Among other things that really stand out about the Messengers era is the rhythm section. There's a looseness there. It's a controlled looseness. It feels like it's being done in a bar, which I like. It breathes. It has openness to it. It doesn't sound like it was locked into a grid, via MIDI. That slight imperfection is actually what gives the music its character. It makes it feel like you're in the room with them rather than listening to something that's been overly processed. And then there's the live aspect. If you've ever heard recordings or seen footage of Paul Kelly and the Messengers performing during this time, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's an energy there that's completely unforced. They're not putting on a show in the theatrical sense. They're just playing the songs, but they're so locked in with each other that it becomes something more. Lyrically, Paul Kelly is operating at an incredibly high level, and he always kept that up. He's writing about relationships, memories, passage of time, but he's doing it in a way that feels grounded and specific rather than abstract. There's a narrative quality to his songwritings. They're almost all stories. There's nothing, I can't think of many that are just ethereal. The story's there and he tells it. There's a narrative quality that feels almost literary. In fact, in one of his later albums, he took Shakespeare sonnets and turned them into songs, as you do. You could take some of these songs and strip away the music, and they would hold up as short stories, or even one of his songs got turned into a movie. So I guess that happens. And yet, for all his brilliance and the band's brilliance, Paul Kelly and the Messengers never quite broke through in the same way as some of their American counterparts. They had their audience, especially amongst those who were really tuned in to the college radio scene. But even then, I don't think I ever heard them on college radio. I think I saw them on MTV once or twice with the song Darling It Hurts, which is a great song. But there's kind of something special about discovering a band like this and feeling like you found something that not everybody knows about. In fact, when my wife and I got to see Paul Kelly and his band a few years ago in Raleigh, North Carolina, we got approached by a couple of Australian people who accused us of being Australia. They asked us what part of Australia we're from, and I said, we're from South Carolina. And they're like, holy hell, how do you know about Paul Kelly? Because we knew all the words and everything. It was great. Over time, the influence of this era has become more apparent. You can hear echoes of Paul Kelly and the Messengers in a lot of artists who came later. Especially you can hear that style, that storytelling. I don't want to say stripped down, because some of it was highly produced, a more nuanced approach to recording. And even if it wasn't Paul Kelly and his Messengers who influenced that DNA is still there. But looking back now, to me, what stands out the most is how timeless it all feels. Kind of like the Smithereens I did the other day. You can listen to this 40 years ago. You can listen to it 20 years from now. It's still going to fit somewhere. That's what I like. I don't like when I hear like a disco song. Okay, that's from the 70s. I'll hear Flock of Seagulls. Clearly, 80s. Timelessness, I think, is a very strong thing to be good at. Maybe that's the best way to sum up the Messengers era. It's not about instant impact. It's about a lasting connection. Like I said, it's about songs that grow with you, that change meaning depending on where you are in your life. And I've seen that more and more as of late. It's about a band that understood the power of restraint, right? And used it to create something deeply affecting. So if you've never really explored this period of Paul Kelly's career, now's a good time. I'd start with Gossip because it's great. And then I'd go directly into Under the Sun, which is my favorite. And then after that's Too Much Water. Then Comedy. Comedy's really good too. Don't sleep on that one. I don't think anybody bought it. That's a great record. And to my Australian friends, this is my first in a series of videos I'm going to do on Australian acts. This one's a little sloppy, and that's okay. A lot of my stuff's a little sloppy, and that's just going to have to be okay. But Australia, I'm coming. The Church, we'll get there. I know a lot of you people have mentioned The Church, and they are fantastic. But, when you listen to Paul Kelly, don't skip around. Just go straight all the way through. Don't look for the hits. Just sit with it, because what you'll find is it's not a collection of songs, but a body of work that captures something real, something human. And I like that. If you're into stuff like college rock, alternative rock, finding new music that kind of gives you that sense of adventure like what we had when we were younger, right? Definitely check out some of the other videos, like, subscribe, all that stuff helps the channel. And until the next time, I will talk to you later. Take care.